Hi, everyone. This is Kyla from Hidden Gems Literary Emporium. And we have a very special guest today, Mr. Kirk Kemp, all the way from Colorado, who's the author of this book. Why am I blurry? Hold on. I need them to see the cover. Oh, I know why we're blurry, everyone. Because I need to turn off the blur filter. And I saw your background, Kirk, before you put on the blur filter, and I thought it was so pretty. I see your beautiful bookshelf back there.
Well, if you're going to unblur, so will I.
Let's unblur. Let's let people see the real us. Yay!
Oh, yes. Welcome to my bedroom. This is where I do all my writing and obviously all my sleeping as well. I don't have a separate writing studio or writer's shed. You know, that like everybody dreams of, that would be good. But I think like most writers, you wind up just writing wherever you can. And this is where I do it all.
All right now. And so now I could show the cover of the book. Here it is, Light at the River's Edge. I want to begin by asking you to just simply introduce yourself, and then that's it, because I'm going to do something after
that. My name is Kirk Kemp. I publish under my first initials, KL Kemp. I'm one of these people, I've done a lot of different things in my life. I never set out to do a lot. I taught high school in a 2-room school in a little village in Alaska. I've owned a craft store. I used to be a school principal at one time. You know, you just kind of, one door closes and you go on to the next. And I've always written, though. I wrote for my college newspaper. I have journals going back to, probably 7th grade. You know, I'm an avid reader. So at one day it was just decided, you know, I've always wanted to write a book. So now was the time to just do it and get it done. So now I have 2 of them. I have Light at the River's Edge. I have another one called The Red Granite Confessional. They're not related. They're 2 separate novels. I think they're really good. I'm really proud. You know, I have a lifetime of experience to bring to writing and to put into characters. You know, I'm always one of these people, I can sit in a restaurant and just hear people, or I can walk down the street and just look at houses, and all of a sudden I can imagine everybody who's ever lived there and all their drama, all their problems, all their wishes. You know, it just seems natural. So, you know, I think that's why it's easy for me to write, because, you know, characters and people, and face it, people are the most fascinating things there are.
Very true. And so have you always had such a creative mind since you were a child?
I have. My poor mom, I think I was probably 9 or 10 before I realized my name was, for God's sake, Kirk, shut up. Just because, you know, I could always tell stories. I could always just sit and make up little images out of nowhere, out of nothing, you know. And of course, at that age, you know, you just sort of blurt it out and just keep on going and going and going, and, you know, drove my poor mother to distraction.
That is actually hilarious. You're funny. You're very comical. You have a great sense of humor.
Why, thank you. And you know, I try to put that in the books. You know, the books deal with some heavy issues, but you know, you can't hit readers over the head. At least I prefer not to, you know, and show life how drama, because even amidst drama, usually there are some laughs along the way. Sometimes it's just the irony of situations, you know, that once you step out, it's like, well, that was really silly. I couldn't see it at the time because I'm so so up in the drama, but it's there once you look back on it.
And you know what? Now, speaking to you now, I can, and seeing your sense of humor, I can see how your personality reflects in Katie, the main character, because she's very sarcastic, and she's going through a lot, but some of the things she says makes you chuckle when you're reading the book.
And some of those lines I have borrowed from, like any writer, you borrow from little bits and memories of other people you've met, and little things you overhear, and somehow in the writing they just all of a sudden just pop back up. Things you hadn't thought of, or I hadn't thought of in 20 years. Like, oh, that's the perfect line to fit in here. That's the perfect thing that fits in this instance for her, or any of the other characters as well.
I want to read the summary, and then I want to get into it, the book.
Okay.
Okay, so again, for anybody who's going to be watching this video, this book is called Light at the River's Edge. And the summary reads, young Katie Whitaker. Is it Whitaker?
I pronounce it Whitaker.
Okay. Young Katie Whitaker is a master at keeping things hidden in darkness until her entire life is shrouded in turmoil and leads her to the brink of suicide. Traveling away from her home in the Midwest to the Fuller Ranch in the scenic Smith River Valley of Montana, she struggles to find a bit of peace and hope and the strength and courage to overcome the torments that plague her. But Katie's secrets grow restless and more ominous until they collide, threatening her soul and her very existence. Now, Katie must find a reason and the fortitude to keep living. Let me start by saying, okay, you pretty much came right out of the gate in chapters 1 and 2, and my mouth was just open reading it because it's so descriptive, and you immediately force the reader to be invested into Katie's life and her well-being. Let's talk about Katie. How did you come up with this character, and why did you decide to make mental health and suicide a theme in this book?
Well, let me back up a little bit. One of my favorite authors, who has passed away now a couple of years ago, his name is Ivan Doig. Just a great writer. And I was reading a biography of him growing up in Montana. And as we're driving through this little small town in Montana, he's describing this theater that's 2 stories, but it leans to the east from all the strong winds to the west. And I'm looking out the car and going, oh, that's like, there's a theater just like that leans. And I realize I'm riding through this town exactly as I'm reading it in the book, which started making me think about writing seriously and how great it'd be to write a story set in Montana. And then I go, but I don't know anything about living in Montana on a cattle ranch. So it would have to be something, some situation where I might be some familiar with and in Montana. And then somehow out of the back of my head, I remember a story from when I was probably, 9, 10, 11 years old, reading a story about a young woman from Alabama who goes north to be a mother's helper for the summer on a farm. So I thought that would be perfect because I have younger brothers that I helped raise. So I know, I've had experience, with kids and family life, but nothing on a Montana cattle ranch. So somehow I just thought it would be interesting if it was female instead. To me, it might make a little more sense, just for today's reader. And when I started writing then, I realized I've always had this fascination with the strength of women. Women as a group, guiding each other and holding each other, not necessarily physically, but just holding each other emotionally and supporting each other. So Katie had to have, and like all of us, we all have struggles in life. some a little more dramatic than others, but if it's your struggle, it's just as dramatic as anybody else's. So she has her struggle, and like most people, it's hard to speak up and ask for help. You keep it inside, and if you keep it inside too long, then it just sort of just erupts into everything, and just sort of nothing in your life goes right. So it was her struggle to keep her secret, but at the same time find herself surrounded in Montana by women who've either had their own struggles and overcome them, or have, they're just there to support each other. So the book is a lot about the different women in the Smith River Valley. And there really is a Smith River Valley in Montana. It's north of Yellowstone. So, it kind of grew from there. To me, the strongest characters in the book are all women, whether it's young Katie or the grandmother, or the character I love is the hairdresser, and she's a very strong character. So yeah, I'm in love with my own characters here. So that's kind of how I came to write the book.
Right. And so with Katie, page 1, well, really the entire chapter 1, you let the reader know that Katie, and you don't really, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't really reveal her age until the end, right? Or did I miss that?
Yeah, she's really young. You kind of get the idea she's in high school.
Yeah, but
not,
it's kind of ambiguous, because as I'm reading, I'm like, how old is this girl? And then at the end, I remember a line where, who said it? Oh, well, maybe I shouldn't say who said it, but they reveal how old she is when she starts, and I'm not going to go into this because this is a big part of the book, when there's a big transition that happens towards the end, and she has to make a decision about what she wants to do, and she meets someone, you know what I'm talking about, obviously.
right.
Around that time where I found out how old she was, and I was like, oh wow. But the topic of emotions and what happens when you don't share your emotions, or when you feel alone, and what that can do to a person inside. Why did you choose to make that a theme of this book?
I don't think I chose to make it a theme. I think that it just happened by itself, as I was writing. It just seemed to be, yeah, I can't really answer that any better. It just seemed that part of the book seems to write itself. I'm one of these writers, I don't plot things out. I write more organically. It just comes to me as if, sounds weird, as if I'm taking dictation from some voice from somewhere. So I write along, and I'm kind of thinking in the back of my head, now what's going to happen next? What's going to be next 2 steps so I can get there? And somehow the book just wrote itself that way. I didn't really pick the theme. It just happened. Once the idea came that she was going to commit suicide, that I did a lot of research into teen suicides and female suicide. So that part is all really accurate. There's no off the wall clues here. That women were often threatened suicide, but fewer men commit suicide more. They're more successful at their suicide attempts. I won't go into whatever reasons, that's a whole nother topic for scholarly endeavor. But so I thought, okay, so Katie, she was really serious because her trauma is really pretty bad. And I think a lot of teens today are more aware of suicide and are more tempted by it.
Yes. And another theme that stuck out to me in the book was the question marks that lie amongst family dynamics. And with Katie's family, there's so many question marks and secrets and things that she doesn't know about that she finds out later. And I don't want to dive too deep into that either, because when that happened, I was like, whoa. But you know, that is a thing that happens in people's families, especially, you know, Katie, she grew up in, it seems like a small town, and there's this one character, Miss Poole, who she's always telling Katie, you need to leave because nothing good happens here, and the teens here, they just get into trouble, and you know, blah 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 blah. And so Katie, she's not only dealing with the death of her mother and the death of someone else, and the fact that there's a question mark in her mind about her father. But you know, later on in the book, we find out all of these other hidden things in her life. And then, so on top of all of these other things, she's also dealing with that at a very young age.
Right. She's, you know, she's learned well from her grandmother, and everybody else around her is like, no, we don't talk about that. No, that's not something we, you know, that's just not, let's just forget that. That's not right to deal with it. So she's learned, she's internalized all of that. So she has sort of, you know, problems of family and her own problems all piling in on top of her at once, you know, at that age where most people are trying to figure out what their life is going to be and why it's the way it is. But she's got all these other people's lives smashed in there in that same dark closet, you know, that she's learned to, we don't open the door, we don't talk about that, you know. Things like that can only go on so long before it has to come out in the daylight, whether you want it to or not, it will find a way.
Yes, it will. And it seems as though, so there's a point in the book where something happens, and then, long story short, Katie goes on this summer vacation to the Fuller. Yes, the Fuller Ranch. And I thought it was interesting how you called it the Fuller Ranch, you know, full of life. I mean, there's a lot of children there, there's animals, and there's, you know, greenery, full of love. They seem like, well, they are. They love you. They're very happy, loving family. So I thought that was interesting. Did you do that on purpose? I'm just curious.
No.
Oh,
No.
wow.
I was just trying to think of a suitable name for the family, and somehow that just like, oh, okay, they're called Fullers. Well, all right, fine. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, naming characters, I try to name main characters with some meaning, like the name Catherine, Katie for short, in some cultures actually means strong warrior, you know, a strong female presence. You know, if you think of Saint Catherine, the Irish saints, you know, who was noted to be fierce, you know, warrior for the home. If the warrior can be in the home. So that's kind of Katie. She's a strong character. She doesn't see it in herself, but other names is kind of like, I think when I named that, there's a sheriff in the book named Sam Berger, and I was just I couldn't think of a different name. So I looked at my desk and I had a coupon for Burger King. Well, okay, fine. Burger, change the name, change the spelling, and it just sort of came out Sam Burger, you know, so instead of hamburger. So, you know, it happened, it just works.
You are funny. I like the way that you write and the way that you think. You seem like a very go with the flow person. And it seems as though when you're writing, you're very open to changes, and just, you know, when something comes to you, just bloop, let's just go with that. And I really like that about you.
That comes from my grandmother. The book is dedicated to my grandmother, Florence Lorenz Revis. And she she was just a good old Midwest German housewife, lived on a farm all of her life. And she taught me two things that have struck with me since I was probably 8 years old. One is, and it's in the book, one is there's no such thing as women's work or men's work. It's just work and nobody wants to do it. So just shut up and get it done. So I was raised with that. There's no such thing. It's just work. My grandfather didn't like to cook, but he could if he had to. He could sew if he wanted to, just because if she wasn't around, fine, I can do it myself. But, and grandma she could take care of the farm animals just as well as anybody else, but she didn't want to, but you just had to be done. So you did it. The other thing that she taught me that kind of shows up in the book is that people worry too much. If it's not going to make a difference in your life in 5 years, it's probably not worth worrying about. If it's going to change your life, make a difference in 5 years, then you better sit down and have a good think on it. I think, unfortunately, sometimes people think, well, this won't affect me, so I'll shove that aside in that closet, not realizing that, yes, in 5 years, it really is going to make a big difference to somebody.
And I underlined the dedication in my copy because I thought it was so beautiful. I would like to read it if it's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, now how do I properly pronounce her name? Florence Lorenz Revis?
Revis, yep, you got it.
Okay. So for my grandmother, Florence Lorenz Revis, summer days at her side in the farmhouse porch swing have left me filled with love and a soul full of images, characters, and stories for a lifetime. This book is dedicated to her and to grandmothers everywhere who share stories of days long ago and far away to adoring grandchildren, eager for their wisdom, iced tea, and cookies. I thought that was super cute.
That was my childhood. The best thing of my summer was going to my grandmother's farm for 2 weeks. One, to get away from my older brother who just tormented me all my life. So I had 2 weeks away from him, but sitting on the porch swing, house was on a little rise so you could see out across the fields of Indiana. She would tell me mostly stories of her childhood, of the first time she was in a car. She thought she was dying because the car was going 30 miles an hour. She had never been in anything that moved that fast, and just stories of medicine and childhood illnesses. And I was just enthralled by it all. And, the tea and cookies help, but, what kid doesn't like to just be next to grandma on a porch swing and hear stories?
I agree, because I also like to hear stories from, elders in our community or in our family. My husband's grandmother has the best stories from Puerto Rico, and similar to your grandmother, growing up on the farm, working with the plants and the animals. And, you're right. There's nothing like hearing stories from grandma. You're absolutely right. I want to read something from this book. Oh, yes. Okay, before I do that, I ran across something that I underlined. Katie loves books. And Katie, here on page 7, you say, Katie's only companionship was found in her books. So is her love for reading a reflection of your love for reading?
Probably. And, in her circumstances, kind of impoverished, it was an escape. She had her own little special reading place in the house that only she could fit into. When I was a kid, I had a tree house, and, other boys are fighting pirates and, fighting off wild animals. I'm in the tree house reading. That was kind of my escape. My education at the same time, because you learn so much from books. You only have one life that you live, but through reading books, you can live as many lives as books as you can read.
I love that saying. And we also say, we talk about the impact that reading and access to books has on people's minds, culturally. So, for example, you could be from the city, not know anything about farm life, goats, make cheese, or the type of, setting this book is in. But you can read this story, relate to the characters, and in the real world have a love and acceptance for those types of people. And having access to books with characters and settings that are based in different cultures allow adults, and especially children, but adults too, to open their mind up to different places and people and ways of life around the world.
Right. And some of the great teachers of the world have for centuries realized that people learn best not through being told what to do, but best by stories. People are pretty smart. You can tell them a story and they're smart enough, they'll figure it out for themselves. So in the books, that's kind of why I put the humor in here, because I wanted to be engaged with it. I wanted to learn something, or see life, somebody else's life through somebody else's eyes, and learn something and still enjoy it.
Yes, and I think that readers who engage with this book will definitely feel that and pull that away from this book. I'm trying to find something to read that is not a spoiler. So definitely can't be towards the end, because the end is like, let me see. Oh, okay. Oh, but is this a secret in the book? I don't know. I mean, it's on page 2.
Nothing in page 2 is going to give too much away, I don't think.
Okay, good. So let's do this. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to read. Are you looking at the book?
Yep.
Oh, I'm thinking about reading a couple paragraphs from that event that happened on page 2. Should we do that?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
Since you know which ones you want to read.
Okay. And this event is just one of the many things that happens to young Katie in her life. And like I said before, when readers start reading it, it's just like you kind of lay it all out there. Like, this is all she's been through. And then it starts with this scene that I'm about to read. So let's say I'm going to start. Okay, so basically she's home with Graham, her grandmother. 2 police officers come to the door. Okay. Mrs. Whitaker, we're looking for an Irene Whitaker, a pot-bellied, dark-haired policeman asked as he patted the butt of his gun. And question really quick, interjection. When I was reading this, I was wondering, I'm like, why is he patting his gun if he's telling them what I'm about to read?
Just seemed like a natural thing. It's kind of a threatening move. Katie's hometown is pretty much down on the dumps. It's there's an oil refinery there that's closed. People are moving away, and that's in the first 2 pages. So, he may not know what he's getting into. He's just kind of being menacing, maybe not have to, but it's more dramatic than if he's standing there smiling and Mr. Happy.
Yes, and when I was reading it, it added an element of suspense, because I'm like, oh my goodness, did Katie do something? Did Graham do something? What's about to happen? Okay, so he's patting his gun. Katie studied him through the lock screen door. That was my mother. She's been dead a long time. A thinner but not much taller blonde cop stepped out from behind his partner. His voice was too forced, too friendly. We are looking for someone to talk about a Ryan Whitaker. Who would that be? He asked. Katie's eyes widened and she stifled a small smile. Wait here. She had long suspected the cops would come looking for Ryan someday. She turned to Graham, sitting by an unwashed window, staring at an empty bird feeder. That part made me sad. The police are here wanting to talk about Ryan. Graham searched the sky for birds that weren't there. Mm-mm-mm. Graham, there are cops at the door. Katie raised her voice and told her again. Graham waved her hand, holding her off for another minute. Katie marched between Graham and the window. Cops asking about Ryan. Graham leaned closer to the wide windowsill, choked with tissues, pills, arthritis cream, and her Lucky Charms. With a dramatized groan, Graham went to the door. What is it you want with my Ryan? She snapped at the officers. She disliked being interrupted when a cardinal was about to appear. The taller blonde cop adjusted his belt. It's about Ryan Whitaker, ma'am. May we come in? No, you may not. You got something to ask? Ask it. This here screen door won't block your questions. Graham straightened up as much as she could, though her days of standing straight were almost over. No questions, ma'am. May we please come in? No, may we come in, please? I'm the old one here. Are you hard of hearing? I said no, Graham repeated. The short cop grew impatient. Open the door. Graham sputtered. If you ain't got questions, why are you wasting your time here? The tall cop flattened the palm of his right hand on the screen door as if it were something soft and precious. There's been... Rapid. We're back. There's been a shooting over on 16th Street. We're here to tell you about it. He patted the doorknob as he talked, coaxing it open. Graham fumbled and unlocked the door with great effort. She appeared suddenly tired. Katie, you go in the kitchen now. Pour us something cold to drink, she ordered. The only cold drink they ever had to fix was iced tea. Graham drank the stuff by the gallon. Katie did as she was told and brought a tray with filled glasses into the front room where the blonde officer had pulled up a small side chair and sat close to Graham's window. Graham rarely sat anywhere else. As the short cop, his belly hanging over his belt, paced by the front door, his partner leaned in close to Graham. It seems a gentleman had a problem with your Ryan at a place called Goodley's Garage. We're not sure what happened. 2 bullets found a target in your Ryan. And that's where it all pops off, seems. You are a very descriptive writer.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, and when you're reading it, you can see exactly what's happening, and even the small descriptions of the cops, how they look, the pot belly or Graham's window, or even the fact that, she can't, as you say, her days of standing up straight are almost over. It really, you could see it.
And, and that's typical of older people, my grandmother was that way. And I probably will be that way someday too. It's either just gets to be too much effort or the muscles just aren't there much longer to really stand up. You can stand, but standing up straight takes a bit of effort. You have to remind yourself, okay, straighten up now, and when you get a certain age, you kind of just go, oh, it doesn't make any difference now. I'm not going to even bother anymore. To get a good character across, you don't have to go into a lot of detail. You just have to go into the right detail. You get the feeling that Graham is living her own little world because she's waiting for a cardinal to show up that probably will never show up. And that tells you a lot about her. She's elderly. She doesn't sit in other places except by the window, waiting for something to happen. And Katie knows it's not going to happen. So that pretty well describes all of Graham without going into detail what she looked like, what her age was, what her background was. You don't tell her what her views are. You just know that she's she's an elderly woman living in her own little world, and that's the main part.
I love that piece of advice for, people who are just starting out with writing or authorship, that you don't need to go into too much detail. You just need the right details.
Right. You need the most important part. It's the same thing with describing a room. You don't need to go in and describe everything that's in it, but you need to describe how a room feels. You may describe, like in the farmhouse or the Fuller Ranch, there's two fireplaces, big stone fireplaces, one at either end of this big room. And there's what they call an Irish cupboard, a big open hutch with cups and glasses, coffee mugs hanging along. And you just get the feeling that it's a very big, but a very cozy room that's just well lived in. You don't have to describe every piece of furniture. You just need to describe how it feels to the main character, how it feels to Katie. Because maybe to somebody else in the room, they might describe it differently. But it's how it affects your main character because that's how they're going to see it. That's how they're going to react.
That's a great piece of advice. What are a few, a couple, or one main takeaway that you think readers should grab from this book?
I think the main takeaway for anybody of any age is that no matter how bad life is, no matter how bad you think it is at the moment, that chances are someday you may have to, walk through a waterfall to find it, but someday life is going to get better. And it always does. There's really no reason to give up on anything. It may be a struggle, but that's what makes stories. That's what makes life. Life is not always easy, but I look at older people who think, oh no, I don't have any story. Nothing exciting ever happened to me. And once they start talking about all the things they've been through, it's like, look, you're a survivor. You're 74 years old and you are still here. You've been through a divorce. You've had children die. You've had your house burned. Okay, that happens to a lot of people, maybe not a burning house, but people lose houses for different reasons, move because of jobs, gain jobs, lost jobs, had a child who disappoints you. But you've lived through it all and you're 72 and you are still here. You are a survivor. And we're all survivors, we all are. I think that comes from, I had a friend who loved to go through old cemeteries and read tombstones. And in southern Indiana, a gentleman named Moses Bennington was buried. He was a Civil War veteran and a Revolutionary War veteran. He died at age of 101 and I believe it was about 1889. And it's like, holy cow, medicine was so bad. Life was hard back then. If you can live to be 101 in those times, then I have nothing to complain about. Well, I can do a lot of complaining, and I do my share, but I want to be like him. I want to be a survivor and just keep going at it.
I love that. I had a great grandmother. She died at 108 years old. And so and she had 13 children, and she's from the South. And my grandmother, whose name is Queen, still lives on the land that my great grandmother had. And my husband and I and our son, we took a trip down there last year. And so she would also tell me stories about when she had to drop out of school in 3rd grade because she had to raise her brothers and sisters. Her mother passed when her mom was 33. And so she would tell me about that, tell me about the farm. And it was just so interesting because she was quote unquote elderly ever since I was born. When I was born, she was 80 years old. And so every year, at her birthday when we would gather and, there's she had a lot of children. So there's literally hundreds of us cousins. And so every year she would say, oh, if I don't make it next year, you know how when people get up in age, they start saying that, oh, if I don't make it, if I don't make it. And then when I turned maybe 17, I just stopped believing her. I'm like, Grandma, you might outlive all of us, or you're probably going to be here longer than you think, because I've been hearing this speech for like 15 years and you're still here and you're still moving and grooving and talking. And even all of us cousins, she knew us all by name. And, you know, when I started getting older, I would think, you know, what if she forgets me? I haven't seen her in a year. Every time I see her, oh, hey, Kyla, how you doing? Oh, and so, you know, I just going back to what you were saying about being a survivor of life and just never giving up on your life and your happiness and your future, no matter what you have been through. I can't wait for people to hear this. This is a message that everyone needs to hear.
I think so too. You know, sometimes we get so wrapped up in all the mundane things of life, you know, and paying bills and putting food on the table again and again and again, and mountains of laundry that never end. And, you know, arguments with a spouse or a neighbor or disagreeing with your kids that we tend to forget the important things in life. And I think that's what novels do best. It gives us somebody else's life to look through and makes us realize, wow, if they can live through that, my problems are a piece of cake. What am I complaining about? You know?
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I'm going to wrap this up because I feel like we could talk for a very long time. I want to thank you so much for your time and for writing this beautiful book, Light at the River's Edge by Kirk Kemp, well, KL Kemp. Do you go by Kirk or KL or both?
I'd go by Kirk. I just publish under KL.
Okay. And this book is available here at Hidden Gems Literary Emporium, your family-owned nonprofit community bookstore. We're here at 55B Morris Street in New Brunswick, New Jersey. If you want to set up a virtual appointment or have this book shipped to your home, you can also give us a call, 609-361-4331. And so for you, Kirk, what if people want to ask you a question or want to make a comment about this book? How can they reach out to you?
I do have a website. It is klkemp.org. They can go to the website and you can leave a message on there. And I can tell you, send it back to you to buy a book. I believe in supporting bookstores. I probably won't sell you a book directly from me because that's not fair to bookstores. Bookstores, we need them as much as they need us. But yeah, if you have a question about writing, I'm glad to, take a look and help you out if I can, but yeah, visit the website.
I love what you just said, that authors need bookstores as much as bookstores need authors. And we put so much love really into speaking with you guys and, reading your books, because we do read the books. We don't just promote them. We read the books and we give our honest opinions and critiques and things like that. And, we want to create a fabric between authors and independent bookstores. So when an author releases a book, they can tap into an entire network that is already strengthened, so we can all help get the word out about what we're all doing together. So
let me make one correction. It's klkemp.net, not .org.
okay.
So yeah, my website is klkemp.net.
Okay. klkemp.net. That's easy to remember. Yes, and I'm just glancing at your radiant picture here, and I love your summary. And it seems like you have so much life experience. You've done so many things, and we are interested to see what is next for you in your life.
Well, thank you. I will share it with you then.
Please do, because we'd be interested. And please, let's stay connected.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you again so much for your time, Kirk. I really appreciate you.
You're welcome.
All right now. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.